Breaky Park, the podcast about theme parks hosted by two guys who live nowhere near their favorite theme parks. I'm Eric.
And I'm Noah.
And today we're going back to my basement TV room circa 2001 with a viewing of Popular Mechanics for Kids, Season 3, Episode 2, entitled Ticket to Ride.
Not like the board game. It's not the board game. People might be thinking we're going to do an entire podcast episode on the railway-based board game Ticket to Ride. But it's not that. What is this episode, Eric?
Walt loved trains.
Walt did love trains.
No, this episode is about the TV show Popular Mechanics for Kids. It's a TV show based on Popular Mechanics magazine. And this episode in particular debuted on September 25th, 1999.
This was the first time I watched this show, so this wasn't a part of my childhood. Maybe I watched an episode and just didn't remember it. But it gave me very much like Daniel Cook crossed with like Bill Nye vibes. It's like the kids are going around, they're older kids, but it's like the kids are going around but they're actually knowledgeable, not just being like, yo, what is this shit here? But they actually sort of like can explain what the science is along with the adults, which I like, because it made it feel more like, if I was a kid, I would like that, because it makes it feel more like engaging, like it's not just some adult telling me these facts, it's an actual kid talking to me.
Yeah, I think the difference between this show and Bill Nye is Bill Nye was obviously so centered around Bill Nye, the person, and the kids were kind of just like an ancillary, like, side topic to that, who kind of just demonstrated the science and were kind of mostly there to look dumb. Whereas this, there is the central host, Charlie, who we see a little bit in this special.
Oh, is he the guy who was at the other park?
Yeah, the guy who was at LaRonde.
Oh, I was gonna wait to say that, but yeah, LaRonde was in this. We'll get to LaRonde later. Oh, so do the kids change every episode?
There's a central cast of 4 kids I'm seeing, who all kind of grew up to have their own respective careers. They aren't nobodies. Notably, Jay Baruchel got his start from this, who's now known for his work with like Seth Rogen and all the Judd Apatow movies.
He wasn't in this one, was he?
He wasn't in this one. Just a lot of like child stars who grew up to be notable-ish people. This episode in particular featured Tyler Kite, who I've never heard of before, but he does have his own Wikipedia page.
Is he the one where I said what did I text you? I texted you something like right as soon as I watched it. Let me check my text. I said he sounds like he has a bunch of marbles in his mouth and he's from like Jersey.
I've never heard that expression before. I had to look it up to see what you meant, but...
That is an expression that exists, right?
No. I was able to find what it meant, and I agree.
He was fine later. I think it was just, like, one line that he said. He was, like, talking about, like... I think it's when he was talking about, like, the cotton candy he was eating. He sounded like he had, like, a bunch of marbles in his mouth, because he had, like, he just enunciated certain, like, syllables that made it sound like Jersey. That was terrible, but...
I wanted to clarify with that because he is not from Jersey, unlike what you said. This is actually like such a Canadian show, and that's probably why it was so instrumental in my childhood. All of the kids who are from it are from Canada. The show itself was mostly produced in Montreal. So Jay Baruchel, who I mentioned before, he was actually from my hometown of Ottawa. Tyler was from Lindsay, Ontario, which I've never heard of. And the other host in this special, Alicia Cuthbert, who also grew up to have her own career, grew up in Calgary.
What did she do after?
She did a lot of like the typical like Canadian child star stuff. So she was in Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Hey.
It looks like she had a lot of work in 24, the TV show 24. She's done like a few like movies, nothing like super noticeable. House of Wax, the horror movie from 2005.
It's pretty substantial for coming from like, yeah. You know what other show this reminded me of?
What?
Another Canadian show. It gave me Mighty Machines vibes.
Oh, yes. I think like these were back to back on like whatever, like YTV or whatever channel I was watching these on.
Mighty Machines was, there has to be a Mighty Machines roller coaster app. I guess probably not, actually, because that's without construction equipment.
Maybe they're constructing a theme park. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, it is worth noting that this episode of Popular Mechanics for Kids is actually one of many episodes of the series that covers theme parks.
Really?
This is just the one that grew up.
Wait.
Yeah.
Why we should have watched them all. What other episodes are there? Where else do they go?
I mean, I'm just looking, like, under home media, like it lists that they had two different like VHS like box sets. One that was called Extreme Rides. That's the letter X hyphen TREME, Extreme Rides.
Yeah, of course. Goes without saying.
Another called Roller Coasters. So I'm figuring between those two, there must have been like a substantial number of like theme park based episodes.
Oh, or segments. There's probably a lot of roller coaster segments scattered.
Once again, like I opened this episode by saying that the science stuff is lame just because I wasn't a science kid.
I found some of it pretty cool in this. Like, it actually, like... Okay, why don't we get into the meat of the episode? Because I actually found it pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even talked about, like, why this episode is so relevant to the pod. And the reason for that is that most of it takes place at Universal Islands of Adventure, which would have just opened by the time this episode aired. And for me, as a kid who visited Islands of Adventure, like, a couple of years after this... even going back and watching this is just such a blast from the past.
And I should clarify that I haven't been to Islands Adventure since I was like 5. So.
Oh, I didn't know you'd ever been.
I went to Universal when I was 5, but I haven't been since because I went back to Disney when I was 15, and that was the only other trip I took. And then the only other time I went to Disney besides those 2 trips were our program. And I didn't go to Universal at all when I was there. So I've been to Universal Hollywood 2 years ago, but I haven't been to Islands of Adventure in memory. So it's all my knowledge of it is through just YouTube videos and just Twitter.
And this TV show.
It makes me like, I used to be like one of those people who's like, Universal's not as good as Disney. But now I've obviously come around on that and I do want to go to Universal. But this made me want to go even, like, more somehow. It just gave me that nostalgia where it's like... Because I feel like there's not a lot of old Universal specials to have, like, nostalgia towards like there is with Disney. And this kind of gives you, like, that same vibe as an old Disney special would have.
This is a complete side note, but I've been, like, trying to talk Noah into doing, like, a Universal dedicated trip for a while. Like, staying on Universal property, which is something I've never done before. Plus, Islands of Adventure is a fantastic park. And as you can see from this special, which is like frozen in time, it hasn't really changed that much from what you see here.
I do have a few questions for you because I didn't do any research on purpose because I wanted to talk to you about it. But let's start off. So they do their intro and, they're eating the cotton candy and they're doing all that. And there's a scene where they're on the lagoon. And it kind of blew my mind. They said all the water from all the rides in the park come from that central lagoon.
I can believe it. I mean, is that too far off? I remember when like Magic Kingdom used to have the water around like the Castle Hub. Like that's the same water that's used in the Jungle Cruise, isn't it?
But they said, here's the thing, like Splash Mountain is specially treated water because you get splashed on it. And I would assume Dudley Do-Right, like Ripsaw Falls, I would assume that's also treated water. So does that mean all the water in the lagoon is treated the same way that the Dudley Do-Right water is? Or is it like once it enters the ride, it gets treated? Or is that entire lagoon just treated water?
I'm going to guess that it's the latter, that the water, like once it goes to the attraction, gets treated because... as we see, like a large part of this special is devoted to Poseidon's adventure and like they go into all the water treatment facilities there. I remember they point out that like it has its own reservoir at the park, which is very similar to what Splash Mountain has.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's something like that like the filtration all happens there.
Yeah. Is Poseidon's Fury still operating?
Yes,
it is?
Yeah.
Okay. And because I haven't heard, like that's one ride that I don't know why I thought it was closed, because it's one that I never see anybody talk about on Twitter. I never see anyone talk about on YouTube. I know the restaurant that's there.
Mythos, the one that has the sign with the...
theme park review.
Yeah.
But Mythos has a sign outside from theme park review from like the year 2000 something saying like best theme park restaurant. So it's an outdated sign also from a not very relevant source.
We should mention they do update it. They update it every year because it just keeps winning that award for like best theme park restaurant. So it...
Oh, do they update it?
Yeah, so it's like 6 years in a row, which is just such a tacky thing to have in like an otherwise immersive land.
Is it also the best theme park restaurant?
I don't know. I've never eaten there. I don't think I've ever had a good meal on Universal property, to be honest.
Is it going by theming wise or like food wise? Because I haven't been to either, but I would just assume California Grill has better food than Mythos.
It's not in a theme park, so maybe that's the technicality, but there are definitely better restaurants in theme parks at Disney World than
Like
Mythos.
maybe one of like the really expensive Epcot restaurants would probably beat it. Like there's that new the new one that opened in the Japan Pavilion that's like hidden away. I forget what it's called. Pete Warner really likes it.
Yeah, or like the Monsieur Paul in
Yeah,
France.
all the Pete Warner favorites.
Yeah. So the special itself is kind of divided into three segments for three different attractions. We have Poseidon's Fury, as we've mentioned. Then it gets into the Triceratops encounter, and then finally closes out with the Incredible Hulk roller coaster. So I guess we'll just kind of go one by one, give our thoughts on each of them. Since we already talked about Poseidon's Fury a bit, it looked like you had some thoughts on that, Noah?
Oh, I just thought it looked super cool.
Really? I was going to say that show, like, I remember as a kid, it fucking sucked. I hated it.
Okay, so like, I'm a guy who doesn't really like screens at theme parks. I'm okay with them if they're integrated well and they're not noticeably screens. This you can obviously tell it's a screen, but I just think like the water effects and fire effects look cool in the show.
And they're water screens. It's like Phantasmic or World of Color.
Yeah.
They demonstrate that.
Is that like water tunnel something you actually walk through? Like the vortex?
Yeah, no, that's something that I actually remember.
Yeah, that looked cool.
I looked into it a little bit. You asked whether it's still open, and I think they had a refurbishment a few years ago, which I was really stoked about because I remember, and you can kind of see in this special, like the CGI looks like complete shit in this attraction. So it's a little better now. They changed up the story as well, so it's not Zeus versus Poseidon. I think it's Poseidon versus some other dude. It's still not great. Like, I don't know. I wasn't in love with it.
I don't know, I'm just a sucker for giant balls of fire and water effects on attractions.
I guess the other notable thing here is it's one of the few Universal, like, unique IP attractions.
Yeah, but that's Universal's whole shtick is like ride the movies. So you can't judge them for not having.
Yeah.
Disney's different. Like when you go to Animal Kingdom, you don't expect it to all be
Ride the
movies.
animals.
Ride the animals.
The one mechanic guy in this segment is so out of it. He's taking the host Tyler throughout the attraction and like the backstage rooms to control the water jets and fireballs firsthand.
I will say, throughout this special, they do get like important people talking. Like it's not just like some Universal representative. They get the people who actually design these rides and like actually like work on these attractions. It's not like other specials where it's just like some PR person from Disney hosting it or just some person explaining how the ride works. Here they have like the actual designers talking to the kids.
It's not Stacy from Must Do Disney. It's like,
No, but we love Stacy still.
oh, of course. But yeah, speaking of that, do you want to get into Triceratops Adventure? Because this was such a cool segment.
Before that, I just want to mention when they talk about the IMAX screen, when they said 5 NBA players on like it's 5 NBA players tall, did you also think that seems kind of small for an IMAX screen?
The note that I took here was that, like, do you remember when IMAX actually like kind of meant something and it was like a curved screen and it was like a real like hardcore experience that only showed nature documentaries at like a museum?
Yeah.
And like it wasn't just like a sales term for like normal ass movie theaters.
Yeah, there's an IMAX theater near me and I literally can't tell the difference between that and like a normal theater. It's like slightly bigger.
Like they show like the 1-ton projector in this show, and I don't think that they have that in like every AMC with an IMAX.
Well, it's all digital now anyway, so they wouldn't have a projector to begin with. But sorry, they wouldn't have film. They have a projector. They wouldn't have film. But
yeah, I think the thing that you talk about is like the film is like 5 times bigger and like.
Did you ever the best is when you went to the Science Center, the Ontario Science Center, and you go see the IMAX movie there in like the actual dome. It's like it's like the one where the screen surrounds you, and they have like the exact same spiel there where you could actually see like the really big film spinning through it.
That's what I remember. I remember I grew up in Ottawa and we had the Museum of History, and their IMAX like theater is the same. It's the dome. And then in the room next to it, it's like a glass room, so you can actually see in where the projector is. And
It was called
looks,
like Omnimax.
I think so. That name
Yeah.
sounds familiar, but like it's the exact same projector that you see in this show. It's like massive. They have like the giant spools of film that you can see, and IMAX just kind of that IMAX of my childhood is kind of gone now. It's just a sales term.
But when I still go to a movie theater and I hear IMAX, I'm always expecting like this great experience. And I remember, I never learned my lesson. I always get into the theater and I'm always like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Remember when you go to IMAX theaters and like to get in them, it will be like a lot longer. It's not like you walk into a movie theater and just turn. Like when you go to an IMAX theater, there's like 4 hallways you need to turn through to get to like the actual theater after you enter the doors.
I remember that. I remember the whole experience of like finding your seat, and they were always like the fully retracting seats, because at least the one that I grew up going to at the Museum of History, it was because it had that dome screen. The screen would actually kind of move back, like at the start of the movie, to be like almost directly on top of you, and so you had to like crane your seat back.
Yeah, and you get like the Soren effect where it feels like you're moving at some points.
Yeah, it's kind of like seamless, like because it's a dome, like you can't really see the edges of the screen.
Yeah, they showed some. I remember it would always be like at the science center, always like nature documentaries, or they had one about railroads, which I really liked. But I never went to it. But I remember one time they were doing like a Harry Potter marathon, in those screens, and I think seeing like movies like that in there would be so cool. Like they should do that more once COVID's gone. Like just play more real movies inside those theaters. Anyways, I just wanted to say that I didn't think that saying it's 5 NBA players tall is very impressive, because that kind of makes it sound small. That's 5 humans. I'm sure that's very tall, but I feel like there's a better verbiage you could have used.
I'm gonna do the math now because I'm curious. But like, let's say like a tall NBA player would be 7 feet. That's being generous.
Yeah.
That's 35 feet. So that doesn't seem huge. I'm not great at estimating distances, but that doesn't seem as big as it was in my childhood eyes.
Yeah.
Anyways. Triceratops encounter.
Yeah, it was super cool. Like,
I love this bit. They show it's really just like I don't know what his role is, but like the ride mechanic, universal creative guy, showing how they build the actual animatronic for this giant Triceratops, which I don't even remember existing at Islands of Adventure. Apparently this was like its own like little show building off to the side that you could just enter and just like see this animatronic close up, but it's really impressive.
It probably was for the Jurassic Park ride, and they just pretended like nobody would probably notice.
I don't know. I remember like one of my favorite memories of visiting Islands of Adventure as a kid that one time was inside like the actual like Jurassic Park like visitor center building. That's just like a reproduction of the one in the movie that you can just, they had like all these little like animatronic and like puppet dinosaurs walking around. I distinctly remember there was this one team member who was walking around, had that like fake arm thing where like he's holding like a baby Triceratops, but like they have the fake arms that it looks like it's like an independently moving thing, but it's obviously just a puppet. But as a kid, that completely fooled me. And that was like, when I got back to school, I was like, holy shit, guys, they have a real life Triceratops here, like a baby.
Just and a nerd.
I remember being so like, that was what like sealed this park.
How old were you?
I went in 2003, so I would have been 6 or 7.
Oh, okay. You'll get a pass for thinking it was a real Triceratops.
Well, did you see this animatronic in the show? It was good. This is a really good animatronic.
Yeah, I want to say it makes you realize like how far animatronics have come, yet how far they haven't at all. Because like even like honestly, I feel like a lot of this stuff is becoming so subtle, the differences. Like obviously, so human animatronics are much harder to make than animal animatronics.
I think the thing usually like the party line with dinosaur animatronics in particular is because none of us have seen a real dinosaur walking around, because we don't know how they actually move.
Yeah, but like it's cool because they have like, do you see like the giant piece of metal and it moves on like axis, and that's how they make it breathe, and it's just stretching the skin out.
Are you talking like it's like the billows thing like you'd see in like an old fashioned like fireplace that like squishes together?
No, it's like how they make the stomach contract in and out to make it look like it's breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's just stuff like that. Like, it's so simple when you like see how it works, but when you see it like all wrapped together, you think that would be like insane.
It's also one of those things that if you just like told me to make an animatronic and gave me all the materials, like that's a little like movement tick that I probably wouldn't think of including, but it brings so much life to the creature. I have a note here that the little like those bellows like blowing out at the side are kind of the precursor to the mighty Ikran breathing beneath your legs on the Flight of Passage. Like, it's the same kind of motion.
I don't like that.
You don't like that effect?
The breathing, you're like, okay, it just makes a weird, because like I don't like when you initially connect to the Ikran and then it does like that vibrating underneath your legs. It's kind of uncomfortable.
I don't like that part. Like the part where it's connecting to you.
Yeah, I don't like that. I like the breathing.
I hate the part where they show your picture on the screen.
Yeah. I like the breathing. I like it's like, 'cause I never thought about like, oh, the zipper on these animatronics, they show like how all the skin's wrapped up and they just put its skin on like a jacket and zip it up. Like, that's something I never thought of before.
Yeah, the zippers. I don't know how they hide the zippers, and just like the seam looks so obvious in this show, but you know that once it's actually out there, you wouldn't notice it. So that's an art that I need to like. We don't appreciate nearly enough.
Yeah. Do you have any more points on the animatronic?
Not on the animatronic itself, but in the surrounding like Jurassic Park section, I have to get a shout out to Pteranodon flyers.
Oh yeah,
I think it's a special like 2-second clip in this show. Love that. That ride is my holy grail.
You have to have a kid. You have to have a kid, and then you can go on it.
I feel like they're gonna close it before I get the chance.
Better go fast.
And then they also show the Jurassic Park like play area, the playground there, which also kicks ass. Like that was something that I loved so much as a kid as well.
I wanted to talk about right after this. They talk about trips to space like in the soon years, and like obviously that hasn't happened yet. But I just found it funny with like the recent news of Joe Rohde retiring and then going to work at Virgin Galactic, which is actually trying to send people to space for tourism. And it's probably going to be a real thing in the next few years, definitely next decade, probably.
I was trying to figure out from the timing of when this show came out in 1999 if they were talking about like Elon fucking Musk again.
You thought Elon Musk was, they're talking about Elon Musk in 1999?
They might have been. I don't know what he was up to then. Fucking bullshit. But you're probably right. Like, I remember Virgin Galactic being like a big like news item even at this time.
Was it back then?
I've heard about Virgin Galactic my whole life. Like,
really, I know it's pretty old. I've heard it like a few years ago, but I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah. But yeah, the way that they're talking about this is just like a few years off is very funny in hindsight.
Honestly, like Virgin Galactic now, with like the fact they brought Joe Rohde, and I forget the name of the other Imagineer they brought on board, but that tells me that it's probably going to be happening relatively soon if they're starting to think about like guest experience and stuff like that.
I feel very like, as I should, very like skeptical toward any like space tourism company.
Oh, I would not do it I probably couldn't afford it, but...
I can't do it. I wouldn't afford it. It's probably, like, absolutely terrible for the environment. And I just feel like it's, like, vaporware. Like, is any of this actually going to happen?
They did, like, Virgin Galactic did, like, an interview with Joe Rohde where he said, like, the reason he wants to work on this is because it might give people this experience of, like, going up into space and seeing Earth as, like, a real thing. So, like, when they come back down, they're going to want to take care of it more. And it's going to try to encourage people to embrace conservation.
That's such bullshit.
It is, but let's be honest, like, the people who are going to be doing these things are the people who own, like, $1 million companies, the people who can actually have a direct effect on the environment versus, like, some guy who just drives, like, a pickup truck.
But they're also the people who aren't going to do anything. that they can afford a trip to space, like that's, you can see where their money's going. It's not to the environment.
I know, but I guess to Joe Rody, maybe these people, if they go into space, they'll have this outer body experience where they can actually see that, oh, look at this little blue marble floating in the universe. We should protect it.
I admire your optimism, Noah.
I'm just repeating what Joe Rody's saying. I don't know if any CEOs would actually go along with it, but I like that idea and that mindset.
Anyway, we talked about it earlier, but do you want to go back to LaRonde for a little side bit here?
I just one more thing. I just wanted to say that $98,000 in 1999 seems kind of cheap for going to space.
I feel like every estimate that I've seen since then is like millions. So
yeah, so 98,000 seemed like not that bad of a price. I feel like we should do an episode about space tourism one day. That'll be its own episode. I have a lot more to say about it, but I don't want to say it here.
I think there's a lot we could wrap into that as well, about just like millennium change and like optimism. I remember reading tons of magazines as a kid about like all these things that were supposed to come in the 2000s that just never happened. And like with the Epcot connection, like that feels very theme parky enough for the show.
Yeah.
So we'll get to
Millennium Celebration is like a 4-part episode though.
Well, Epcot Millennium Celebration is definitely a 4-part episode, but I think there are like things that we can even tie into the side that are just like general Y2K-ness.
Yeah. Anyways, LaRonde.
Yeah, we go back to LaRonde here with our host Charlie, who looks like a poor man's Mark Hoppus, or just like a general, like what I imagine a 2000s like pop punk loser looks like.
Yeah, I guess.
What did you think of LaRonde? Because you've never been there.
Have you been to LaRonde? You have been, right?
Once, yeah, as a kid.
I've never been. I understand. I know it's like a Six Flags park, but like a C-tier Six Flags park. So from the video, I was under the impression they had like one roller coaster. They had like a few in here, didn't they? Or did they just show the one? Yeah.
I don't know how many of them are still around. I know a lot of like the smaller flat rides were, and I told you this recently, and you were pretty like mind blown by it, that a lot of the rides were taken from the Expo 67 in Montreal.
Yeah, I remember.
Like the little like cool people mover you can see in the background here. That's like a direct like just carried over from the Expo that used to be here.
I will say it gave me vibes like it was like halfway between a carnival and a theme park. So it's not shitty enough to be a carnival, but it's not impressive enough to be a full-blown theme park.
A lot of the rides do look like the traveling rides that you would see at a carnival. They could just like pack up on a truck. Yeah. Like they show like the what's it called? Like the spinning one that like makes you like stick to the wall. Yeah. I remember we went on this when I went to LaRonde, my sister got like super fucking sick on this ride. So that's why that one stood out to me.
I will say, so like the whole purpose of this segment was like how to not get nauseous at theme parks. And some of their options are just like you're gonna eat like all the stuff is like mainly just being like, hey kids, don't do the fun stuff at a theme park, like don't eat candy, don't drink soda, like don't do the thing that you're obviously gonna do when you go to a theme
My note
park.
here was that all of Charlie's advice in this segment sounds like stuff that Noah's parents would have told him.
Shut the fuck up. I have a note here that says yum, oatmeal at a theme park. Because one of the things you should eat before you go on a ride was oatmeal. So I was like, you imagine going to a theme park and being like, can I have some oatmeal, please? Like, I'm sure you could get that at Disney, but like not in the park, like at your hotel.
Definitely not at LaRonde.
No, like at LaRonde, I'm sure LaRonde does not have any of the things they mentioned. I forget what the other foods he mentioned were.
Bread and muffins.
Yeah, you could probably get bread and muffins there. But probably not just a piece of bread, though.
Not just a loaf of bread. That's what they show. They show a picture of a loaf of bread, and you're not finding that at LaRonde.
This reminded me, there was a show, I forget what it was called. It was on, like, Food Network. And it was kind of like Mythbusters, but for, like, food. And they did an episode about, like, how to prevent nausea. Like, it was, like, how to get rid of nausea when you go to a theme park. And, one thing I think I remember, I don't quote me on this, but the one thing they mentioned was like the main way to get rid of it was ginger. Like ginger was the best cure. Like if you're feeling nauseous at a theme park, you either just have like a ginger tablet or like some ginger ale.
That's why like ginger ale on airplanes when they come around with the beverage card, like so many people get ginger ale because it's supposed to prevent nausea. Yeah. Again, I don't know how true this is, but
I always get ginger ale just because my dad always got ginger ale on a plane. As a kid, I would just get the same thing, and I always get ginger ale on an airplane. Oh, and also in this segment where they're talking about like nausea, I did not expect them to show like vomit on
There's
the
so
segment.
much vomit in this bit. Like it's
Like
disgusting.
on a kids show, like this is usually something reserved for like an R-rated movie.
Yeah, the one part that sticks out to me is where he like vomits in that paper bag, and then the guy like sits down to eat his food that was in the paper bag and like opens it and screams.
There's that, but I was talking about where he like in a car and he like vomits on whatever paper he's reading, and it actually shows like splatter.
It's so disgusting. Like that part actually made me like sick to my stomach watching. You want to talk about like preventing nausea, just like don't watch this show.
Anyways.
Yeah, speaking of all things green and goopy.
That was a good transition. It's better than what my transition was gonna be.
The Incredible Hulk.
I want to go on this ride so bad. I've never been on this ride, and I wrote in my notes, like, I want to do a vertical launch.
What do you mean a vertical launch? I don't know.
Like, when it's going up, it goes like, it's like a launch, but when you're going up the lift hill, it launches you.
Oh, like it's like slanted up? Like
Yeah. It's like the same idea as like Mission Space and, Space Mountain in Disneyland Paris.
Yeah, so like unlike the Incredicoaster where like the launch is like flat on the ground.
Yeah, unlike, most launch or rock and roller coaster, where it's the normal launch.
Okay, I see. No, this is a very good coaster, and I had to rewatch a ride through when I watched this special, even though they give you a ton of ride through footage in the show itself.
I mean, it's so good that they rebuilt the exact same ride. Didn't they like tear it down and then mainly just rebuild the ride just because it was old?
I think so. I know they've done some like story changes as well, which had a pretty weak story to begin with, being just like a roller coaster. But
at the beginning, you mentioned how I was like one of those kids who was like, Universal's stupid. And one of my arguments was always like, oh, you can't just paint a ride green and call it the Hulk. But like, and then I realized not everything has to have a story at a theme park. Like, not everything has to be like Disney where you go there and it's like, sometimes a roller coaster can just be a roller coaster.
And just like a legitimately good roller coaster too. Like there's a lot of like, they're playing with the whole bag of tricks right here with all the twists and turns and flips and stuff.
I mean, Velocicoaster looks insane. Like, that looks like the smoothest ride on Earth. Like, I want to go on it so bad.
Universal trip. It's going to happen soon.
Not before a Disney trip, though.
No, I agree. But the part that I wanted to shout out here is we get a tour from Mark, who I guess is part of the Universal creative team who worked on this. And there's this little bit where Alicia's talking to him and she says, "This is Mark. He's the real Hulk." And then he like turns green for like a split second and like his chest like puffs out in like really bad CGI.
Oh, that reminded me. When we were talking about Poseidon's Fury, they did like the exact same shtick with like this old man telling you about like...
Yeah, at the beginning there's an old man, and then at the end the guy like transforms into the old man.
Yeah, I did the same shtick twice. I did find it interesting. It's something that I never thought of before when they were talking about how when you go on the ride, they weigh the car because it changes based on because the weight of the vehicle changes every time. And then that's how they determine how fast they should launch and how much power they should give the wheels. That's just something cool I never thought of before, how it like calculates that based on the weight of the riders.
Yeah. No, I was learning things from this special, which is...
Yeah, no, it's like it was legitimately educational.
Do you want to get into like final thoughts on the whole special, or did you have anything else to throw in?
I just want to say, so they're in the Dr. Seuss area, yeah. And I just thought that was super cool that all the trees came from like a hurricane. I forget which hurricane they mentioned.
Hurricane Andrew.
Hurricane Andrew. And all the trees, they like brought them in that all got like slanted and stuff. And I thought that was really a really interesting fact.
I thought there are no straight lines on this island feels like such a theme park, like Imagineering type line. Like I've definitely heard that about Toontown as well. And that seems like such a thing that gets repeated very often.
Yeah. Oh, and also the Green Eggs and Ham, which I think recently reopened because it was closed for years. That Green Eggs and Ham restaurant reopened. So they were eating that in here. So that was kind of interesting.
Another thing for Ted Cruz to get mad about. This whole land.
Are they going to cancel Seuss Landing?
Probably. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts on the show, or do you want to?
I think we should wrap it. I very much enjoyed that, but I told Eric after, like, this is gonna launch us into doing like Daniel Cook at Disney World and Unwrapped at Walt Disney World, and Eric mentioned the when Guy Fieri went to Disney. So
There are so many of these, and then if we get into like the ABC like sitcoms that all had like the Disney episodes, that's a whole other category for us to get into.
This when we first started this podcast, I was like, there gonna be enough specials and enough like pieces of Disney media to talk about, and I think there is.
Definitely.
And not just Disney. We're not a Disney podcast, guys. We're a theme park podcast.
This episode was Universal, so we're already showing our different stripes.
Even though I haven't been in years.
You should go back. Anyway, thanks for coming along for the ride with us at Achy Breaky Park. Stay tuned for new episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
And be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Achy Breaky Park.
If you like the show, feel free to leave a 5-star review.
Until next time, don't forget, it was all started by two guys desperate to go back to a theme park.